Luftwaffe and Pilot Presents. And today we are interviewing Abe Rius, and that's a pen name, and he is going to share his story with us. And I've known him about a year, and he's part of my Discord group. So, where do you want to start, Abe?
Oh, thank you for welcoming me to the program, and I'd like to thank you individually before we get going. I just want to say I've been watching your interviews and learning a lot from the group pages like the Facebook page and then Discord and everything. It's been really cool talking with people about this stuff and just having this option as I figure out what's been going on. So thank you for that, and for making me feel comfortable discussing my suspicions and my theories, because you know, in mainstream out in the world, you can't really say much more than, oh, how's the weather? Great, cool, bye. And that can weigh on a person.
Well, you had mentioned that you have written several books and none of them are published.
Yeah. So it's this weird duality that I'm going through in this transition phase, as I call it. I noticed that my life seemed to have three distinct phases. The first one was all the rough stuff, you know, getting your bearings and kind of getting picked on by the normies or whatever we want to call them. And then there was this transition phase where I kind of detached from all that, and I said, okay, I'm just going to focus on me, recovering from stuff, getting as healthy as I can be, and putting all my ideas to pen and paper. And the books, originally it wasn't the idea to have a book. It was just a bunch of short stories that I thought were just creative writing. There were prompts and ideas and things, and every now and then I'd work with a writing partner. But then I started to notice that a lot of them, they kind of fell into the sequence. They worked chronologically as a single series or a saga, and I broke that into 10 books, you know, with 10 main themes and in general, I guess, genres to each one. And over the years, that turned into many, many chapters. The first one turned out to be, I think, 1,406 pages. And I was going to self-publish all of them, but then, you know, you hear stories about people who come forward or who, even if they're not whistleblowing, you know, they address an issue that's a little too hot, it's too sensitive or controversial, and then they just get hammered or they get sued for whatever reason. And I wasn't really in an emotional state where I could handle something like that, because like I said, I was transitioning from the really rough start of my life into what I hope is a really stable and nice, like prosperous future. So during the transition time, I wanted it to stay smooth and quiet. I wanted to have my peace and just get all the work done. And then once I felt safe enough to publish, or I had a publisher I knew wasn't going to just edit the books into hell and back and change it into something that wasn't the original intention, I was going to go ahead with that. So, but yeah, there are basically 10 books in the series, and it starts off, the first book introduces the protagonist, which is pretty much based on me. The second book talks about a modern version of an exodus where a lot of people like us come together and they start leaving their home countries if they have to, and migrating through other countries and places that aren't necessarily on the maps, and finding where they want to build a new community, or communities for each of them if they have their own ideas. Book 3 in the series talks about my sustainable community idea, and I always talk about this cool house I want to build, and that's the thing that I'm referring to. It's a whole city. It was originally just like a normal 1 or 2 story beach house that had some cool stuff in it, but over the years I added a garden and a farm and a school and garage and all sorts of stuff, and it grew over the course of about 15 years now into a full city design. So that's book 3. And then the rest of the books, they just talk about how the world is changing beyond, you know, climate change and like mass ascensions and consciousness evolutions and all that, to all these people that have kind of been hiding out there, you know, the civilizations we don't know much about, the nations that aren't on the map, and how they start coming forward to the people that are receptive to them and saying, hey, we're here, you know, it's not just myths, and do you want to work with us? Do you want to trade? Come visit? Do you want to help with your city, in my case? But that's the series. So I could talk, that would be like a whole group of videos by themselves. Each book I could talk for probably half an hour on.
Well, that sounds interesting. So what did you want to talk about today?
Well, I like to kind of introduce myself and what led me to write stuff and design communities like that. Basically just given some milestones throughout my life. Let's see, what else do we have? the dreams especially, I wanted to focus toward the middle or end of this talk on a lot of the dreams I've had that don't seem to be what everyone tells me dreams are. They say, oh, that's just, dreams mean nothing. It's a randomization of things that you thought of or stuff in your subconscious. And it doesn't always seem to be the case with me, because I remember more dreams than people say on average people remember per night. A lot of them are very lifelike. Sometimes I can read the time on clocks or read a newspaper in the dreams, and I keep hearing, oh, you can't read anything in dreams because it's all jumbled. So it seems like they're memories from something that I'm detached from here. And when I was introduced to the SSP stuff, I thought, that's a pretty good fit. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I have so-called dreams that I just call them flashbacks or bleedovers. Yeah. And they're so real, I can smell and taste the blood. And you don't get that in dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember specific things I'm eating in a meal, or exactly what a person looked like, how they were dressed, all the details in the room around us, parts of conversations. Every now and then I remember a name. Like just the other week, I can't think of it right now. I wrote it down somewhere. That's one thing I forgot to do, but I'll get that for the next talk. I remember the name of a captain that I'd worked with somewhere out there.
Really?
Yeah, like the full name, the rank, the full name, and everything. And it kept popping into my head in the dream, and I woke up, and for some reason I thought, that's very important. I don't know why it's important, but I need to write that down before I forget it. So I started making a dream log and everything like that, just because there's so many of them. I mean, like 10 plus per night, and it's like a whole other life is happening out there. And I'm not one of those people that practices, you can pick what you're going to dream. If you repeat certain things before you go to bed, you can kind of repeat dreams. Like if you have a really nice food dream, sometimes I'll have a dream and the meal is just fantastic, and I wake up and I'm like, nope, turn off my alarm, I want to go back and have that, I'm finished that meal in the dream. But it's something more than that.
Yeah, I remember my commanding officer from one of my altars, and I know him on Facebook, and we have met twice real world. Oh, and cool. He's every bit what he was in space. Yeah. Smart, funny, occasionally sharp-tongued.
Yeah, sounds like an officer.
Yeah, but he speaks English here, and he spoke German there, so
that helps.
It does a lot. He's not public, so I can't state his name, but yeah. Whenever you meet the other person that you remember and you start comparing war stories, it brings it to reality really fast. And the people we were around, especially the second time, because we were really familiar with each other then. My partner was with us and another man from the Facebook group, and we were staying at Misha Johnston's house in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And we were supposed to spend 3 days together, and this was supposed to be a time where those of us who had served could just talk.
Yeah.
And by the end of the first day, I got told to shut up. that it was too much. Yeah. That 8 hours of listening to me talk was like a college university education all in one shift. And I'm like, oh, I was just being surface.
Yeah. That's why I put it into books, and I'm building a giant website, just a repository of all these ideas that have come to me, and because there's no way to fit it in a resume or a business card or a talk or anything. I've tried, going to other groups, and just bumping ideas around, creative writing style, just to see what they think. And most people that I've met so far, other than yourself and a few others in the SSP groups, they weren't at a level where they understood it. They were used to more mainstream TV drama style stuff, And I thought, okay, there's way too much here. I have to put it into books, or no one's ever going to have time for it.
Yeah. So You want to
What?
talk about what some of this is about?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if I can drag images in, but I've got some images that some of them are actual stuff that you can see. You know, people can go out to some of the bases that I've been to in this life, you know, waking memory stuff. And then, oh wow, the camera just got super bright.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to be sharing the video because we're protecting your anonymity.
Okay.
But if you want to send me the pictures in email, then I can add them to the final cut.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'll be easier. No, I won't have to pause between every sentence and drag these over. So, yeah, there are a few dozen. And, you know, let's see. Yeah, I think they're all sorted. So I'll skip the picture stuff for now and just read through this. Basically, my family had some money when I was growing up. I mean, when I was really little, right after I was born, I was kind of born into money, but it wasn't like super rich or elite stuff. It was just, you know, they were comfortable. They had, you know, white collar jobs and that sort of thing. But the problem was that steadily decreased. Their funds, their means kept getting worse because it just seemed like they were all infighting and fragmenting, and it was just bound to collapse, which it did. And at the point of collapse, which was around age 7 or 8 for me, you know, they were moving to different states to get away from each other. There were divorce proceedings, and we were basically left with just about nothing. So the struggle started for me very early. And all the while there was paramilitary and military training, which was, it wasn't really an escape for me, but it definitely kept me in better spirits and health during that time when the family was just, you know, ripping itself apart. In elementary school, I was in the Cub Scouts, and then right after I went to Boy Scouts, so a little paramilitary there. More paramilitary was Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. I did Army training in that during high school and senior high. I got a congressional appointment to the Naval Academy, but I didn't end up going. I went to another officer program at another university closer to home. And then during that first year, my first year at that university, I did Air Force officer training. So Army to Air Force, and then after that I switched branches again. Everyone there kept telling me I had more of the mentality of a Marine, and when they hit the towers, I was like, I can't wait another 3 to 4 years for a degree and then commissioning and all that. And then A school, I'm going to go now. So I enlisted and I joined the Marine Corps. So Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, and after 4 years in the Marines, and I'll get into some of that, I had a lot of time at Navy bases. So I kind of got the sample pack of all the branches of the military.
Sounds like.
Yeah, it was years and years. I think I started Cub Scouts when I was 5 or 6, and I was constantly studying and training until the military. I probably had 5 years of pretty decent preparation before I enlisted and was active duty. Active for 4 years and then inactive reserve for 4 years after that. In the Marines, we did, I was in 2 combat deployments. We went through, where did we go? We had layovers in Europe to get to Kuwait, and then from Kuwait we pushed into Iraq and went over to the Syrian border and all that, and went through Al Anbar province, mostly the desert stuff, and a few cities, and then we came back through Germany and Ireland before we got to the States. So went all over the place. I think we did like 200 plus missions over the course of those 4 years. So,
wow.
A lot of stuff, and I never saw myself. I'm not big, tough, fast, you know, strong or anything like that, but I was tough enough to hang with them. I was infantry, I was a machine gunner, an anti-tank man, and then a combat instructor. So even though I'm a medium-sized guy, I was, you know, hanging with the best of them, I guess. But I still don't consider myself to be a warrior or fighter because it's just not my nature. I went because I wanted to do my part to help people get into better lives, you know, stabilize their countries and end wars, not pick fights and have like glory in battle and whatever the other people are going for. Because I grew up, you know, like I said, my family was falling apart. There was a lot of infighting. I couldn't do anything to help that situation, but I figured I could at least be as tough as I could be and help people somewhere. You know, if I couldn't do anything at home, I could at least go around the world and help improve things somewhere. So I did that, and I felt pretty good about it. When I got back, I was, for about 6 or 7 months, I did the instructor thing. We had, I think, 12 battalions of Marines plus attachments. There were FBI and other guys who came through our training program. And, you know, we just put them through all the classes. We had like 360 different classes on a dozen subjects, and we got them ready for a reaction to snipers and improvised explosive devices, whatever they might encounter over there. And then once sites had calmed down, they could go in and do the intelligence gathering. We did a course called sensitive site exploitation. So any time there was a site that had valuable or potentially valuable stuff in it, we teach them how to sift through it and look for things that might be hidden. And then they deployed with that training, and hopefully it brought a lot of them home and got more intel for the good guys.
Wow.
And you want me to just keep going, because I've got a few more bullet points to go over.
Yeah.
All right,
keep
so let's
going.
see. After that, during the reserve time and a little bit after, I ended up living next to and going on to a bunch of Navy bases in Virginia, then Japan, Peru, and then where you are. Do you care if I say where you are in these videos?
I'm in Central California.
Okay, so I was Southern California most of the time, but yeah, California. So bases all over the place, and so far I've been to 57 countries on 6 continents in all 50 states, and I have these lifelike dreams. If we're counting that as memories or something, then I've been to Antarctica and a few other places. So it seems like the dreams indicate to me that there's heavy travel beyond the waking hours in my life, and most of the places I've been going, or it seems like I've been going in these dreams, include China, Russia, and Antarctica. Just heavy on those 3. And there are a whole lot of other places, like Greenland was one. And I remember meeting people in planes. Sometimes it's a commercial jet full of people, or a whole unit of troops, maybe a company-sized element. And sometimes it's just a small, like a private or corporate jet. And there's 1 or 2 other people sitting in there, and we're just having like a personal chat about something while we go somewhere. But I always, for some reason, I always know exactly where we're going. I don't know if that's a sense of direction or a briefing that I'm partially remembering, or just being able to see a map. But it's always Russia, China, Antarctica, and sometimes Greenland.
So you're staying on world.
A lot of the times, but yeah, there's this whole other part to it. Those are the more recent dreams. During and right after the military, it's difficult to say because I don't have any memory of approaching a world from such a distance, like high orbit, where I could see that we're approaching some different world and I don't recognize the ocean or the landforms. But a lot of the stuff seems to me like we had to be on some other world, just because I was in ships that didn't look like any of the ships I've seen on the Navy bases. Some of them, it looked like there was the background of pitch black space or whatever it was through the windows. And a lot of the structures in the dreams don't look like anything I've seen on Earth. It wasn't like abstract art. It wasn't truly bizarre, but it was very unique. I've got some pictures of that I'll send too. But yeah, I can't really say I've met aliens unless they looked a lot like us. In that case, maybe. And I can't say for sure if I've been to other worlds, but my growing suspicion is that I've been to. There's just so many dreams that I do remember in so many places that don't look anything like Earth, that my belief is that I've been to a lot of other planets. So it's hard for me to say that just because it's such a bold statement with no evidence, but I don't know what else to think.
Yeah. When I was sifting through my memories, it was when I read Michael Relf's work on his website that I finally understood that the bulk of my planet memories were on Mars.
Mm.
Up to that point, I had no idea where I had been. And most of my memories are in ships out in space. So very little planetfall.
I noticed a lot of mine seemed to be ships that were under construction, or if they were complete, they were empty. It was just me and maybe one other person. I remember one time there was an officer standing in a room. I mean, it was the way it was laid out. It was so open. It was like concentric floors around a courtyard, and then there were these huge, like, floor to ceiling windows, like walls of windows that were continuous. So every floor you could kind of see out, and as you're looking across the courtyard to the other side of each floor, you could see through those windows out into space. So it was like being in a skyscraper, and you can see through the center part to the glass and everything on the outside. And there was this one person standing in there, and I don't know if they were in Navy whites, but it was a white uniform. And
Okay.
I don't remember the conversation or anything, but it just seemed like they were showing it to me, or we were inspecting and commissioning it, or something was going on, and it just wasn't staffed at all. It was very strange.
That is strange.
So I thought maybe I was designing them, or I was doing a walkthrough. Maybe I was touring them and deciding where I was going to be. I don't know what it was, but yeah, very rarely was I ever with anyone other than in a few dreams. Sometimes there was like a squad or more of guys in, black, not camouflage, but black fatigues, and they had all their SOTMOD, their tactical gear, their primary and secondary weapons. But I never felt like I was a soldier. I don't remember fighting. I don't remember killing anybody. There's one I remember where we were going up. We went down these stairs, and it was kind of like a forested, maybe a woodland or a jungle area up on the surface. And we'd gone downstairs toward what looked like a bank vault door, and they were hacking into it or whatever to get the thing to open. And I was with them, and I saw all their guns and stuff, but I don't know if I had one, and I didn't feel like I was one of them. I wasn't in like a fighting mindset. I was just, maybe I was escorting them somewhere, or they were escorting me for protection. I don't know, but usually it was just being on ships, not around many people, or being in meetings on planes, personal or commercial jets as we're traveling somewhere. Or that's another thing I thought of. It could be that my memory was altered enough to make me think where I was looked like a normal jet, and maybe it was something else.
One of the things that the people I personally counsel, that I tell them they need to do, if they're capable of it, is to go into self-hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And so because you have access to your subconscious better in self-hypnosis. And just say, okay, subconscious, lift the veil and show me what really happened. And I found in my own memories that when I do that, what is uncovered is often very different from what the cover memory was.
That makes sense.
So anytime I get a new memory filter up, I do that with it because, to be honest, I don't trust my memory. I know that I'm an asset that has been under deep mind control. I have 2,200 alters, so I can't, it's really bad when you can't trust your own memory.
Yeah.
So.
And I've read a lot of reports where they do experiments like that, and they see how much of memory they can mess with. And even when they're not interfering with one's memory, people remember things in different ways at different times for different reasons. They recall it differently. There's so much to it that I'm definitely going to have to be cross-examined and do some self-hypnosis and everything else, every other technique I hear about to make sense of all of it.
One of the things Tony Rodriguez mentioned is we remember things in different colors.
Yeah.
I know the Montauk chair. I know that it's almond. I have seen photos of it. But in my memory, it's turquoise blue. So
Interesting.
colors will be different. And in my memory, people don't have faces. So that's a sure sign that that memory has been messed with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're looking at someone and you make the effort to go back in that memory and look at the face to see who it is, and there's no face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, then I know for sure that one's been messed with. And for probably 30 years, every Friday, I had a dream of being a mermaid in a kelp bed and happily swimming among the.
Oh, and it was a cover for like a submersion tank?
It was a cover for abductions for service. So that was the cover that they gave me for all these abductions. So you have to look behind the cover
Mm.
You have to look behind the curtain to see what's really there. And
That
it
reminds
takes a
me. Sorry, go ahead.
it takes a lot of work to do that. And courage, because you have to be willing to see what's there.
Yeah. Well, that would reminded me of probably my first dream or memory or whatever it was when I was little. My first dream of anything like this, anything space related. I remember I was out front of our home in the forest of Virginia. We were in Northern Virginia at the time, and the family hadn't split up yet. We were out. We had a great green belt and a creek and everything, and things were going pretty well. So I don't think it was a trauma-related dream or anything I saw on TV. I wasn't into sci-fi at that point. I think the only thing I ever watched on TV was like, Care Bears or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But this dream, I was out front in our front yard, and it sloped up to the street, and it was all dark because it was nighttime. And I recognized all the trees and the house kind of in the distance. I looked up, and there's this typical circular thing just hovering up there. It's all blacked out. I don't know if that was to be tactical or just how it looked in the dream or how they made it look. But there was some light coming down from the middle of it. Maybe that was from an engine to drive of some sort, or it was that typical beam they talk about picking people up. But I don't remember getting picked up. I don't remember being abducted, or seeing anything like a stereotypical mongoloid-looking alien. I just remember that area, that distinct circular thing standing out against the night sky, which was a lighter blue and had the stars, of course, so you could kind of see the silhouette even if it was darker. And then the bluish light come down from under it. And for a long time, I thought, at the end of it, it seemed like a nightmare. I remember waking up from it and feeling like something had chased me or maybe started to eat me alive, and it was just really scary.
Oh.
Yeah, but that stood out in my mind. When you're talking about going back and reassessing, looking at these dreams and seeing if there's anything there, if there's more than you remember, or if what you remember is completely fake, it's a cover, because that seems like something happened, and maybe it was meant to seem scary. Maybe the scary part was the cover and something good happened. I don't know, but there's definitely something there and something that's missing. And after that, the dreams weren't really frequent at first, but that's when they started. That was like the first time I had anything space related happen to me after hours, when I was unconscious. And since then, especially during and after the military, it just picked up. I mean, it became nightly, like going to bases and having meetings and being, in all these strange places, strange buildings and ships and everything, to the point where now it's like, it's weird if I don't have one. If I wake up and I don't remember one of these things happening, that's the weird thing.
About what year was that first one?
The first one, okay, so that had to be, I was around 3 or 4, so 87, 88.
Okay. Okay. My first one was the first one I remember was in 1959. And my mom still complains about that. There was one morning I woke up and didn't remember her.
Yeah.
And that because they mind wiped me.
Yeah.
And that a couple of months later I was in kindergarten, and I told the teacher that Martians had left me on the doorstep. Mm-hmm. And Mom beat me to a bloody pulp because I gave birth to you. You were not a foundling, and on and on and on. But my I had just turned 5, so my barely 5-year-old self was simply telling the truth. The Martians had left me on the doorstep after all this service. It was the Germans from Mars. And so I had to learn to edit what I said around my parents.
The story of my life. Man, there's so many things I edit before I say, and you'll probably hear me pause for a second or two during a sentence, because I'm very careful about which words I choose and which parts of the story I tell. So
I've done a lot of that, I would say the last 6 months, I've been less careful about it and just, last June, the CIA broke my shoulder.
Oh, I heard,
And
yeah.
I had to have reconstruction surgery in October. And what they anticipated being an hour surgery turned into 4. And they gave me a nerve block so that there wouldn't be muscle spasms during the surgery. But it took my voice for 3 weeks. I couldn't talk at all. And all these people that were used to me running everything just went batshit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way to explain it. It was like I was their drug and I was cutting them off. And there were a lot of people then that I've had to eliminate from my life because they were just so needy when I didn't have it to give. But there was a man, and he's in Russia. He speaks beautiful English. And I think he also speaks Chinese. And he said, well, I have this Patreon site and I would like for you to do in-depth, and we'll be charging people and I'm going to split the money with you. Well, nobody ever paid me before.
Yeah.
And I got, you know, a lot of the interviewers, it's just the same intro to Penny over and over and over and over. So this was a chance to go in depth. And we did 12 videos. And it's hard to go back to talking surface after that. So I've been just laying it out. And if they can handle it, fine. If they can't, that's fine too. They'll move on to somebody that's talking their level.
That's where I am.
So,
I have that reaction a lot, or not that reaction, that's not the right word. That's my framework for interactions at this point. Either people get me or they don't. Either they've done their homework or they haven't, you know, and I'll explain stuff to them if they're polite about it, but I don't know if calling it a short fuse is accurate either, but I just, you know, I'm at the point where you are, where it's like, you know, I'm tired of doing the intro and the basics and the watered down version, you know.
yeah. Because of, I've been shot with energy weapons 10 times now. And then last June, the experience of them breaking my shoulder because I did something they didn't like. And it made it very real to me that I may not have a long time to wait to do this.
Got to get it out.
So that's part of why I'm recording testimonies of people like yourself. So now that I've interrupted.
No, that's fine. I appreciate it. And that makes me feel more
back
comfortable talking about it, you know, when people open up and, you know, when they're receptive to what I'm saying. So that's really good.
Yeah. There's a lot of us out there and most of us are not being heard at all.
True.
And what I'm trying to do with my YouTube, well, since YouTube told me I had to upload stuff to keep the channel.
Yeah. YouTube, man.
I'm interviewing some of the people that are not getting heard, and I'm perfectly fine with them being anonymous. Now, I hope my audience is fine with them being anonymous, but I want the testimonies out there. I don't want this to be something where there are a few stars and no one else is heard.
Yeah.
There are millions of us.
Yeah. A lot of people got taken, from what I understand.
My understanding is that,
as a matter of fact,
my understanding is that the treaty that Eisenhower signed in 1953 was for 150,000 Americans to be turned over to the Germans every year since. So if you take 150,000 times, what is it, 65 years?
At least, yeah.
You're
Plenty of people
looking
out
at
there
a,
and being copied, cloned, whatever you want to call it. A whole lot of people.
you're looking at a whole lot of people just from the United States. And I know for a fact they're also taking people from Australia and Britain and Russia and China and
Brazil's a big one.
Brazil. And
Now,
yeah,
this
they're,
is counting the homeless and the people that aren't registered. They aren't part of the census anywhere that we don't know about getting taken.
and war refugees that disappear. It was what, 5,000 children disappeared that were refugees from Syria.
Mm.
They were sent to Europe and they got lost.
Yeah,
Nobody
lost.
no, nobody knows what happens to them. Well, you know, there is a lot of trafficking on Earth, but there's also a lot of trafficking in space.
Yeah.
And all of the factions in space are made up of trafficked individuals. I don't know of any of us who have volunteered for this.
That's
So,
one thing that got my attention because everyone said they were taken and stuff happened that they didn't like. And for a really long time, I didn't want to come forward or talk to anyone. Even though I had a good feeling about you, I didn't want to say anything to anybody because other than that very first dream where it seems like something was chasing me or I got taken, I had, I don't want to call them good, but they were at least neutral. It didn't feel, they weren't nightmares to me. And maybe that's because they were all covered up really well. They did a really good job messing with my memories, but I felt bad or like maybe my experiences weren't authentic. They didn't match with everyone else's because the majority of them were neutral or good. So I don't know.
well,
It worried me. I worried that if I came forward, they'd be like, "Oh, he's full of crap," because all our experiences are bad, or maybe they'd suspect me of being one of the bad guys because I didn't have bad experiences, so I must not have been messed with.
I've been told I'm one of the bad guys because I served with the Jesus and the Draco.
Yeah.
But there's one of the followers on my channel that thinks I'm Odin's moonchild.
It's intense.
That was a shock. No, people, my parents were religious fanatics in the Church of Christ. I was not dedicated to anything but Jehovah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, life gets weird.
I had that
What
too.
we
Definitely.
what we remember, part of it is what really happened, and part of it is what our mind is willing to accept happened. Yeah. And a lot of people are not willing to accept that something bad might have happened to them that they don't really remember, because that means they have a loss of control.
Yeah. I remember drowning a few times in dreams, but I don't know if that was like just regular panic dream or if it was part of training that I wasn't remembering because when you drown, you're traumatized, you probably repress the memory. But yeah, that does stand out. That was a pretty bad dream.
So yeah, we have those of us who have been put through this have some pretty bad dreams. Now, I understand from some of the other veterans that they got easier on the kids in the 80s. So
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah. Because I would have been active in the 90s at the earliest, I want to say. Well, late 80s.
Late 80s. So that's why I asked what year you first remembered an encounter. 87 is more towards they got gentler on the kids. In my group, 80% of us died the first year, and these were real deaths. So these kids would have appeared to have just disappeared on Earth. So
they were trying to figure out, they didn't know who to test or what we could do, and they were just testing everything, I guess, bluntly.
My understanding is they learned this technique from the Illuminati, and that it's a technique that they use on their own children. And it's really, really harsh. and a lot of their kids die from it. And a lot of us died from it. And the ones that survived were the toughest. And so we were basically like the cream of the crop. But there weren't enough of us. And how is it that Randy Kramer described it? He said that the DOD looked at the numbers and thought that was a terrible waste of prime resources.
That sounds like something they'd say.
So basically, by the 80s, they had reversed the numbers where 80% of you guys lived. And I'm thankful for that. I mean, if they're gonna kidnap children, they should at least treat them where they survive.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm glad the program got better at some point, I guess.
yeah, it got a lot better in the 80s. We had a stronger survival rate for the kids. There were more factions out there.
That's another thing that when you said factions, that reminded me of how different the people looked when there were people in the dreams or whatever they were. There was one where it seemed like we were on a very wide version of a troop carrying helicopter, not quite a saucer, somewhere in between. And in that one, there was a squad of guys, and they were all in what looked like SWAT gear, the riot helmets and everything all blacked out. There was another dream. They were very distinct, different from that. They were in what looked like purple and black based camouflage pattern, like a normal camouflage uniform, the tricolors, but purple base instead of green. And over that, they had a transparent plastic suit, like a CDC, some type of protective layer. And we were just in like a hangar, really basic hangar. It was almost a greenhouse because the walls were translucent and there were tables. They were working on stuff inside. Another one, again, they were very distinct. We were in the woods. It was got like a gradual slope and foothills out in the daytime, so you could see all the leaves on the ground. The trees were browning. It was autumn, I guess, and they were all on horseback in this one, and they had what looked like wooden masks on. And then the recent ones where it's on the aircraft, like on the private jets, and we're just talking. Just normal business clothes, like really nice clothes that you'd see in a downtown area for, I guess, middle or upper class people. So the few times there were people in the dreams that I remember, they were all very different. It wasn't like, it was always with troops, and they were always wearing this, or it was always business people or officers wearing this. Yeah, I don't know what to make out of that. I guess I was seeing different factions or meeting very different groups.
well, that's possible. There are, well, from the SSP group, we plotted what people remembered on a graph. And I just put a dot for a person that remembered a different group. And we plotted that there were the Germans, there were what the Germans call bankers in space. That's also known as ICC or planetary corporations. And that's basically the military industrial complex, the suppliers for the military on Earth. They have their own space program. And then there was Solar Warden, and they way behind the rest.
Yeah.
And then there were two mercenary companies,
Kruger?
Monarch and Kruger. And the main difference between them is that Monarch shoots its people up with black goo, and Kruger modifies them with technology.
That's
instead.
Interesting that Kruger keeps coming up because right before I enlisted, I was between the time when I was doing that first year at the university, I was doing Air Force training, then there was a time between before I went into the Marine Corps. I kept thinking of the name Kruger. I even wrote about it in a creative writing group. That word always came up, and I thought it was just a name, that I come up with at random. But that was like the one character name in our creative writing sessions that kept popping up.
Kruger is a mercenary company, and they're involved in some of the ET wars. So a lot of humans.
That's what we were writing about. We were writing about Kruger and his group. I swear, I'm not making the. So it was Corporal Kruger in the story, and it was a group of about half a dozen other people, and they were going off and they were fighting aliens. It was like Colonial Marine Corps stuff from the Alien saga. You know, they're fighting xenomorphs and whatever else bad crap they encountered out there.
Yeah, it's amazing how what we do elsewhere bleeds through into creative writing or art or people who are designing video games or movies or writing books. Since my memory has been half-assed restored, I mean, the memories are there, I just don't understand the language they're in. I see soft disclosure almost everywhere. And it's shocking how much is told as fiction. Yeah.
Mine too. All my works are going to be labeled as fiction. Just because, I mean, there's no way that anyone's going to publish that stuff if it's not.
The one I'm writing is going to be nonfiction because I don't do characters well. And it's going to be heavily footnoted because my approach is like anti everything being taught right now.
Yeah.
And it's not that I agree with the philosophy, it's that side deserves for their side to be told.
Yeah.
And
I think it's very suspicious anytime we are in history classes and they only present one side of the story. And it's so polarized that one side is completely evil no matter what, and you have to think that or you're evil too. And the other side is just the victim. That seems very suspicious to me. So
anytime that you're labeling an ethnic group or a religion or an ET race as completely evil, that's your own inner evil being projected on the other. To be honest, everybody out there thinks they're the good guys.
Yeah, they all do.
They think they're the good guys and that their agenda is the best for their people and that they're being all patriotic and proper and service to others. And it's only when you start comparing them to each other and thinking in terms of what would actually be good for the people on Earth that you start to go, whoa. So, yeah.
I tried to express that philosophy to some of the guys I was serving with when I was active. And some of them, they got it. You know, I'd present it like, you know, they'd ask me if I hate the enemy. And I was like, no, I don't hate them. I mean, I'm not terribly happy when they shoot at me and blow up my trucks, but I know that they're being brave and clever and they're fighting for their home turf and they see us as invaders, you know, and all that. It's all relative. So I respect their position. I respect their differences, and I certainly respect their ability to fight because I don't want to become complacent and think, oh, they're just, you know, stupid. They're the bad guys that we'll destroy them for sure. But, you know, I don't think that it makes sense to waste time demonizing and hating things, even if they're fighting you, because it's such a waste of energy. It's a distraction. And it's, you know, from a logical, a very objective standpoint, it's inefficient. And you're probably going to lose if you focus on just the emotional side of things or just your judgment toward a culture you never grew up in. You have to understand them for there to be any peace at some point.
What I remember being told in Knoxville, and I was an officer, it was never underestimate your enemy.
Yeah.
That you respect them. You may not like them, you may not agree with what they're doing, but never underestimate them. That will get you and your whole ship killed. So then I look at some of the things that some of these folks are out there saying, and I'm going, they sure didn't get that lesson.
Yeah.
We were supposed to be making this about you. Come on.
Oh. Well, I like talking about both sides. I like hearing all the sides of the story. Well, let's see. One thing I could do is talk about some of these pictures, so it's easier to sync them up with to make a video out of this once it's ready for YouTube. So the first part, I don't really need to go into much. I talked about the bases I've been to, going through the different military branches as far as training and deploying. But I could go over it again actually. So in the order I have them. There was Fort Sill, that was an artillery base. And then there was the recruit depot on the West Coast, which was in San Diego. While there were times, these are the times where I started suspecting that we were exposed to, if not black goose, something. Because you line these people up, you have hundreds of recruits or cadets in the officer side of things, and they all roll up their sleeve and they walk down the line like they're on cogs or whatever on a conveyor belt. And corpsmen, medics, basically the Marine Corps version of a medic is a corpsman. They're just jabbing needles in you every which way, and you don't know what it is. No one has any idea what's in it. And then a lot of people get really, really sick and messed up. And you just, you make it or you don't. And then after that, after we'd just been injected with God knows what for so long, we finished training. Part of that was going up to another base called Camp Pendleton. That's close. It's kind of Central California. It's still kind of south. It's near LA, more or less. And then from there, we went way out in the desert near Death Valley. There's a place called 29 Palms. It's near the Moreno Valley. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we went to March Air Force Base. That was for a lot of urban warfare stuff because we were pushing into the cities of Iraq, or we would be. Once we flew over, landed in Kuwait, we went up to the border with Iraq, and that was Camp Udairi. I think they changed the name to Camp Victory since then. And from there, most of us pushed inland from there. Some of us flew. They kind of split our unit up into halves. And one landed in Al Tikrit, which is an air base. And then from there, we all kept going. We linked up the flown and the driven elements. We ended up in Al Asad Air Base. And then, let's see, after that, Camp Faluja was another one. It sounds small because they have camp in the name, but it's a full-sized firm base. It's a pretty big military installation. Back in the States, there was a part of 29 Palms that was added while we were deployed, I think the first time. We came back and we started going through there for training. Then they completed it during or after my second deployment, and I became an instructor out there. That was basically a bunch of shipping containers stacked up to 3 high, and they made a full-size town out of it for more urban training. So we weren't having to go out to March Air Force Base. We weren't having to bus across the state anymore. And that was called Wadi al Sahara. Then there was Naval Air Station Norfolk, or Norfolk, depending on who you ask. There's a different way to pronounce it. There was a shipyard up in Newport News. There was a part, well, it was mostly for the SEALs. It was for a few of the SEAL teams. I forget which. There's like all even-numbered SEAL teams on one coast and then all odd-numbered SEAL teams on the other. But that was over in Little Creek. And then let's see what else. I mean, there are other places. There were bases I don't remember the names for, bases I only barely remember going to. And then just research stations like HARP. I went up to the HARP station over in Alaska, the first one. And that by itself, that's a whole other talk, because it was so scripted. It was like painfully obvious that they were putting on an open house type of a show for everyone, trying to dumb down what they were doing and pretend it was all shut down or owned by a civilian university. Now it wasn't Air Force anymore. And one of the guys way out, they have 3 different fields or arrays of antenna around the place that you drive up to the main buildings where a lot of the computing is done. And on one of those fields under the antennas, right up next to the fence as we're about to walk in, this guy, he kind of admitted that this is not HARP anymore. Yeah, HARP technically did stop doing what it was doing, but that's because there's SBX-1 and all sorts of new tech. There's miniaturized, swarms of drones and stuff in nose cones on planes, and I mean it's very miniaturized and advanced at this point, to the point where it's not just accidentally influencing weather while they're testing, stuff in the atmosphere. It's actual weather control. It's mobile. It goes anywhere. It's scalable. You can steer storms, do whatever you want, and get entire armies stuck so that there's no fighting, there's no war at all.
Weaponize it to,
Yeah.
if there's a country that has pissed you off, you can
Just
give
fuck
them
up their economy, cause a drought or a flood. Yeah.
a drought or a major flood, or
And it's a
make it
natural
into,
disaster now, so nobody gets blamed.
yeah, or cause earthquakes
Mm.
and massive damage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's another thing we should probably talk about. And again, I mean, I should start taking notes on successive calls if you want to do more of these, because
sure.
each one of these chapters of my life, each one of these installations, each group of dreams, and sometimes individual dreams could be a call by themselves. And like earthquakes, for example, I've noticed a lot of places I've been to, like right after I leave, they take massive damage. Like right after I left Alaska, there was a quake. I don't remember the scale, the Richter scale number, but it shattered their highways. I mean, it looked like they'd been bombed. It was terrible. So that,
Um,
I don't know if
they
that's
messed,
correlation
they've
causation.
messed, they've messed with the Richter scale since I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
So that the numbers are lower for the same damage than
But
they
they changed
used.
the tornado scale too. Did you see that?
It used to be 5 was the biggest they could get, and there weren't very many of those. And
Mm.
now there's lots of 5s. So I assumed that either weather control makes bigger tornadoes or they change the scale.
Maybe both. Yeah. There's a lot of tornadoes, record number, and fires. A lot of people think that some of it can be drought related, or because the forests are growing, the trees are a lot denser. They're closer together than they used to be in colonial or settler times. So that's part of it. But a lot of people think that it's directed energy or scalar weapons. So they're picking areas that they want to develop, and instead of buying the people out or buying the land, they toast everything. They set the forest on fire, and it forces an evacuation of everything. And then they go through, and they're the heroes rebuilding and bringing jobs and all that.
I've seen just people in the area taking photographs of the strikes. So
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
one of those people that believe it's on purpose,
I
and
think
it's part of the Agenda 21 plan here.
yeah.
People are blaming the high-speed rail, but if you look at the, oh gee, what is that thing actually called? It's a map of areas that were biological corridors under a UN treaty.
Okay.
And the red zones were supposed to be no human interaction in them at all. And I live in one of those.
Yeah.
And those are the areas they're burning out.
Mm.
So they have if you look at the PG&E outages, those overlap the Northern California regions too. PG&E goes down to Bakersfield.
Okay. Yeah, I've been through there.
I grew up in Tulare County, just north of Bakersfield. And my mama was from Oklahoma, and my daddy's people were from Arkansas, and we used to agree with Buck Owens that it was Texas West.
Yeah.
And I live a little bit north of there now. It took me years to lose that accent. Back in the day, before Jimmy Carter was president, if they heard that accent, people would automatically deduct 50 IQ points.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
So we're sliding back in that direction now. So yeah, but there's a lot of deeply intelligent people from those parts of the country. So I'm not making fun of them at all. One of my heroes, Jim Mars, was from Texas.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, it's not all bad. I mean, I had some rough experiences there, but they've definitely got their pros and cons. I always miss the restaurants. They have some outstanding, just world-class chefs in Texas, at least in the cities. and
Well,
barbecue.
I've
I'm
had,
supposed to be vegan now, but man, I grew up on that stuff, and it's pretty good.
I have had 2 cross-country trips and several trips to Tijuana,
Oh yeah,
which might as well be San Diego.
yeah.
But um, otherwise, I've spent my entire life in California, and um, my dad was also born in California,
Oh cool.
and so I'm California native, California citizen. I have not yet filed the sovereignty papers to make myself a California citizen instead of a federal slave, but I, I do understand the procedure. Yeah, that just told everybody what my background is.
We
My
could do a
daddy
whole
was
talk on California. Like there's one mountain in particular, Mount Shasta up near the Oregon border. Man, I have tons of experiences up there. So it's such a cool place.
yeah, they have Lemurian colony underneath
Yeah, I heard
the
that Telos, the city that's down in that dormant volcano in the mountain. And I'm
yeah,
pretty confident that I've
it's
met
not
a lot of them.
it's not dormant. If you drive by in the summer, even in the winter time, you drive by and that one cone has no snow on it because it's
Oh
too
yeah,
hot.
that's a good point.
It's not dormant. It's just waiting.
Mm.
Um,
I wonder if the town, if
regardless,
Telos is, or some device they have as part of their city in the mountain, is channeling or mitigating that energy, that volcanic energy, and using it for something. And then if they
our,
leave, if the town gets damaged, then it would blow up again.
um, where I live, I'm across the mountains from the Long Valley caldera, so we kind of keep an eye on it. It has a lot of small earthquake activity on a regular basis. Sometimes it's big enough to feel it here.
Have you heard of the Panamint Mountains and the Havmasovs who used to live in those, or they say they lived in them?
No, I hadn't heard of that one. I had heard of the Greys that lived under Los Angeles,
Mm.
and there's a cryptid group, and I have no idea what these particular beings look like, but they live in Yosemite, and that's
Yeah,
why
yeah,
it's a national park, is to keep people away from them.
that makes sense.
So they try to keep the tourists on the beaten path, and
Yeah,
those that want to sometimes disappear.
you see that in Alaska
So
too, especially Denali. Denali is this massive state-sized thing, like Yellowstone or Yosemite are, and there's one road that goes through there. And anytime you go off on a trail, there's so many people giving you advice and warnings. You know, always go in a group and have guns and have a plan and tell people where you're going, when you're coming back, because I mean, it's this whole other world.
because
And
there
there's so
are
many reports of
cryptids.
cases and sightings and abductions out there. There's even reportings of pyramid, ruins, Egyptian-looking ruins out there.
Wow.
Tons of stuff.
I
That
had
was one of the places I was trying to go. Anytime I travel, I look for legends like this and for any evidence or coordinates to ruins that aren't talked about a lot. And then I try to go. I see how close can I get, and if I can't get out to it where I can, observe it with my own senses, I network in the area and I call the bases and I say, okay, do you guys have helicopters that I could rent out, or what's the best way to get there? There's always something I'm looking for, and it seems like every state's got them. I mean, in my opinion, there's evidence that if not a global civilization, there was global activity. There were constructs around the world before all the stuff that we know about, the history that we're told. It's just everywhere.
The Guardians have told me about some of the history of the world. I've been told the history of this part of the Milky Way by 4 different ET groups.
Mhm.
And the only thing they agree on is that the Anunnaki created current form humans out of Homo erectus.
Mhm.
That's it. Nothing else matches up. But the Guardians are like the military police of the Galactic Authority.
Mhm.
And You know where the Maya talk about the different ages of man?
Yeah.
The Guardians backed that up, that mankind, whatever form we are, that ituration, will rise at about every 10 to 15,000 years, get to the stage that we are, early space flight and starting to get out and colonize, and that we create so much havoc
Yeah.
that the Guardians have to bring us back. And that every time we are given the choice of becoming a galactic level 0 civilization or being pushed back to the Stone Age, and that every effing time we choose to be pushed back to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Because being a galactic level 0 civilization means we take care of every individual, regardless of our evaluation of their personal worth.
Mm.
And that goes against basically everything we've ever been taught.
Yeah.
We've all been taught that we have to earn our way, we have to deserve our food, we have to work for a living.
Yeah.
And
Slaves. We're taught to be slaves.
we're taught to be slaves, and we have to overcome that to become a galactic level 0 civilization. And the Guardians are telling me we're at that point again, where they're starting to round up all these factions and send them back to the solar system. And all of humanity will be given that choice again. And I'm really hoping that we choose the right direction this time.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we have the technology to do this in the various factions out there. We have the technology to take care of every single sentient being on this planet. And there's more sentient here than just humans.
Yeah, that's, man, I hope more people accept that reality. I grew up where it was the opposite. They were just, well, only we have souls and only we're important, and the other things they can't even see in color, and they were made to be eaten. And it's like, come on, guys. You can look in the animal's eyes and you can see that there's a little more to it than a meat source.
Yeah. I've had people tell me that dogs don't have emotions. Or that cats don't bond with their owners. I have a cat that wraps herself around my foot.
Yeah, every cat I've ever noticed. I mean, they like walk up and they kind of sniff you out a little bit, and then they do the headbutting thing when they like you. They just boom, tap you with their forehead.
Well, one of the neighbor's cats, when I'm outside, the cat will come by and wrap his tail around my leg and just drag it off. And even his owner noticed that yesterday. He's like, Mikey just did the tail thing with you. Mike, I said Mikey likes me.
Yeah. I've had some stray dogs do that too. And even there was one time where in a group of deer, I don't know if it's called a herd or a flock, but whatever the group of deer is called, they were walking up over this ridge line, and I was just up there, exploring, hiking and climbing a little bit. And they all kind of stopped and they noticed me, and I was, worried at first. I was like, are they going to like stampede me? And, they pummel with their hooves or whatever. Are they going to run? And they just kind of sized me up. They all looked my way and like, all right, you're cool. You got a good vibe. And they just, kept eating and minding their own business and walked on.
Yeah. Deer can be dangerous. Lou, my partner, had a then very young wolf hybrid dog. Mm-hmm. And she got attacked by the pummeling hooves of a deer and had to have surgery. It just missed her heart.
Yikes.
So she eventually lived to be almost 25, but the vet said it was because she was a hybrid.
Oh, yeah.
Something called hybrid vigor. But she was German.
I'm in good shape, and any animals that are with me, they're probably going to be okay when we're out in the woods, because I've never gone out there with the intent to hunt, kill, trap, anything like that. It's always just to explore and hopefully to connect with whatever's out there. If it wants to connect with me, cool. And I think they're perceptive to that on some level.
Well, where I live, we still have bears and mountain lions and
Oh yeah,
rattlesnakes.
that's okay. So there are a few species that I'll probably always be afraid of. Bears in particular, because I saw this video. It looked like it was a helicopter recording, and this bear, it was a mama bear and her cub, and she smelled a bear of a different color. I don't know which was brown, which was black, but mama bear smelled the other bear, and boom, just took off like full sprint over rugged mountain terrain, chasing this thing down. And the other bear noticed and ran up a tree, well, climbed up a tree real fast. I mean, and the speed that they can climb trees is unbelievable. They're just like running up a tree with their claws. And the mama bear went right up after him, almost to the top of the tree. And this thing, I don't know, is 40, 50-foot tall tree. It starts swaying. It looks like it's going to break because it's got the bears at the very top. And I thought, okay, if the bears can do that, if they're going to freak out that much over a smell and cover that distance in seconds, I'm probably always going to be nervous going into the woods. You know, even though I have good intentions, God only knows. I mean, there was one time I woke up in the middle of the night. I was camping by myself. I still don't know what it was. Scariest thing that's ever happened to me. It sounded like something was killed right next to my head where I was sleeping, like on the other side of the tent material. A mountain lion or something got snatched up, or it snatched up something. It was a scream, like a blood-curdling scream that was not human, right next to my head. And I woke up like, you know, my heart's going. I'm reaching for anything I can get as a weapon, and thankfully the vehicle was right next to me, so I turn on all the lights and I blare on the horn, and I'm like trying to pack up my tent with one hand and aiming my gun with the other, like, oh God, please don't kill me. What the hell was that? And yeah, it's just they happen in an instant, you know. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I should feel bad or reassess the situation. Like, was I intruding in some way? Was I not supposed to be there? But yeah, I'm very aware of my surroundings when I'm out there because of videos and first person experiences like that. You know, 99% of the time it's peaceful. It's really nice to be out camping or walking around, but there's that one time that'll get you.
During that last big drought, Lou and I were living in a house that was basically next to a creek. And the creek had running water all year, even in the drought, and blackberries. And so the bear would show up. She was a mama bear, and at that point she had 2 cubs with her. And she and I had this understanding. She didn't eat my dogs. She didn't get into my fenced garden. But when I heard her rooting around, I left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Lou's granddaughter, we sent her out to give the leftovers at the end of the meal to the dogs that were out in their pen. And then we heard the bear, so we told her, well, hurry up, you know.
Yeah.
She was like 7, and she says, fine, put me outside with food when the bear's around.
Yeah.
She's in her 20s now. Still thinks I'm mean. She didn't get hurt. We were keeping an eye on her.
I hope someday I'm comfortable around bears, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
This wasn't exactly a comfort situation. It was a mutual respect situation. Yeah. And Lou never messed with her because he was busy doing his job. I was the one that had to deal with the bear all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, she left anything alone that was in a fence. If there wasn't a fence, it was fair game. So
I wonder what else is out there that looks like that, or can, you know, because maybe those are memories that have been adjusted in us too. You know, the things we remember as being a bear walking by. Was it a bear? Or was it something else? Was it one of those, you called them cryptids?
There are cryptids in the area where I live. It's possible.
There have been times where I was in normal issued uniform, camouflage, and whatever else. And I was able to get within inches of people before they noticed. And sometimes they didn't notice. So if I can do that as just a normal guy with normal training and really primitive stuff like colored clothing, camouflage, who knows what the other people out there can do. They could probably take on the appearance of anything.
Well, the people in my faction, the Germans out there, they have personal shielding tech.
Mhm.
They have personal portal tech. They have holographic tech, where they can resemble anything they want to resemble. So if you're being taken by something, it could be a German underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard they do
Or
that too with some of the airships. Like if it looks like a saucer or a triangle, they'll make it look like a helicopter.
I know the American military has that capability. There's a time frame between 3 and 4 a.m. every freaking morning. There's something that sounds like a helicopter going over, and it's like it has to be just inches above my apartment building.
Yeah.
And it's every morning. So that's part of why I stay up as late as I do, is because that will wake me up anyway.
Yeah.
Lou sleeps through it. So,
Sometimes
yeah.
it's either or with me. There's some times where I'm just very sensitive to sounds, any disturbance in the night, or I can't even get to sleep. And the other nights, I mean, sleep through a mortar attack practically. There's just, you're so tired because you worked out or you worked really hard throughout the day.
Well, we have a railroad that goes behind our house, and it uses steam engines of all things. And they blow the whistle, and it's like I sleep through that, but I don't sleep through the helicopter.
Maybe
So,
our minds are making sure we're awake for the things that on some level we know are a threat. And normal stuff, even if it's louder, it's like, oh, it's just a train, whatever, no big deal.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is my subconscious knows what's to worry about.
Yeah.
And that I will hear, and the rest of it I don't. But I get taken a couple of times a week, every week, ongoing, for different factions. I know of at least 3 groups that are taking me regularly. So there's a 4th I've become aware of in the last year. So 2 of them are Earth-based, and I can't talk about them at all. I'll get killed. So
That's something I'm probably always going to be worried about too. You know, like what is the happy medium? What's the tipping point where I can stay right on the edge and talk about this, but if I go too far on any one subject in any of my books or any of these talks, you know, it's like, because there's no way to know. I mean, I don't have like a chart or anything that I can, you know, say, okay, today I was thinking about talking about this, but it's a little too close to the edge. Let me just talk about this part of it. I don't know. I don't know what's declassified. You know, I can only guess. I assume that I'm safe if I just don't name names. You know, if I don't name specific companies or individuals. But
I had my altar was picked up by the Germans in space as me. Yeah, this here and now penny, this body picked up, taken to a meeting with high command because of my interaction with the Guardians. And we had a rather long, extensive meeting. And in it, they said, we know you're talking about us on Earth. And we're okay you talking about us as long as you tell both sides,
yeah,
the good and the bad. So you know, present us fairly and we'll be okay with that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So that's reasonable. Yeah.
Maybe that's why I haven't been messed with quite so much as, I mean, some people, they say they were in a car crash that was very suspicious. They felt like they were targeted, or they got hit with a beam or whatever. There were only a couple times where I was around really questionable, suspicious, shady is the term, medical professionals who did stuff that I felt, um, it seemed like they were experimenting on a lot of veterans just because they could or they needed to or whatever. Malpractice sort of things, just really extreme stuff. But most of the time, I think because I've been so respectful when I'm out and, with a lot of my thoughts, um, I think whoever can pick up on that or whoever's monitoring, they know that I'm mostly just interested in observing and learning and trying to make sense out of stuff. I'm not trying to judge them or bring anybody down. I don't think I know enough to bring anyone down anyway. That goes back to a lot of my dreams or memories being neutral or good. So maybe I'm
Well,
safer than I think.
well, I have enough information to bring down organizations, but not individuals, because they took out the faces.
Yeah.
So, but I can prove that basically since 1953, at least one agency has been kidnapping American kids and mind fracturing them in various ways and sending them as slave labor into space.
That surprised me.
That particular organization I consider to be the most evil thing on the planet. And I would like to take it down.
Maybe we'll
So,
see the day. Maybe enough people will show up and compare notes and have these similar stories, these reference points that something can be done.
well, if nothing else, stop the kidnapping. I'm aware we might have to give amnesty to these people to be able to get them to come forward and admit it happened.
Yeah.
But if it stops it going forward, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, like I compare it to, how America used to be. It was all the Wild West, and there were all these horrible wars between the natives and the colonists. And today it's a lot. I mean, it's not perfect, but it seems like some things at least got a lot better than back in the day when everything was uncertain and difficult. And, entire communities got wiped out by storms and disease. And I hope that at some point the SSB stuff will be more in the open and more like what we've become. Something more respectable and stable, more transparent.
Well, I'm just thinking about those 150,000 kids every year.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that was the 150,000 was just for kids. I thought that was anybody, any citizen.
No, it was kids that were taken and turned over to the Germans.
Jeez.
For service. 150,000 kids from America for the Germans. That doesn't count the other factions.
Yeah.
That doesn't count the other countries. It's just American kids turned over to the Germans. And to be honest, the Germans treated me better than the CIA did in that 5-year training. The CIA were really harsh.
I've had a similar reaction to people who sound German or are from Germany, or when there's talk of the German secret space program as opposed to the American one. I've always had some, I don't know if it's a gut instinct or muscle memory or what, but I've always felt more comfortable around the German ones or Austrian, anyone from that part of the world.
So have I. In fact, I had a Jewish grandmother and I took German in high school and everybody in my family was freaking out. Why?
Yeah. Yeah, why is it that I'm so comfortable around all these ideas and people, all these beings, when my family is, they're just a basket case. They're so negative in their knee-jerk reactions to all these things. I don't understand what makes me feel the way I do about these things from the start and throughout my learning about them. And I think it's probably like you and I have just been exposed to them more, so
Yeah.
we're always going to be more comfortable around all these things.
Part of me is more comfortable about space than it is about Earth. Things are so weird. They're so weird.
I've never felt like this is
least-
normal. Like my body, my life, the government, what they teach in schools, none of it has ever felt right to me.
I mean, they may give me a hard time about being shot up with Draco DNA, but at least I had a place in their society. I knew what my place was, and I was valued for what I was able to contribute.
Here you got, I mean, there's sharks everywhere, the slang term sharks. I mean, you got to be, I don't even know what to call it. It's just so tooth and nail, throat cut out here.
Predatory.
Yeah. I mean, I had so many years of paramilitary and military training and then deployments, and you think, oh, Marine Corps, toughest ever, but even for a Marine, it is brutal. It is ridiculous how overly competitive, how pointlessly competitive most communities I've been through are.
I was raised in a Christian cult, and I see that America is an oligarchy, not a republic anymore.
Yeah,
and see the pecking order slavery, possibly because I was exposed to real slavery in space. I'm more sensitive to it here. And I look in people's eyes, and a lot of them, there's nobody home.
Yeah.
They're just going through the motions of their jobs, and they come home and get drunk or stoned, and that's until they go to sleep, and then they get up and repeat the next day. And on the weekends, they stay drunk or stoned, and you try to have a conversation with them about anything, and it's, I mean, anything.
Other than how great beer and weed are. They can handle those conversations pretty well.
They can handle those, or they can handle the sports team or whatever soap opera they like to watch.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. And I mean, I've been trying to get the people in our apartment complex to buy generators because PG&E has said they're going to shut off our power every time the wind blows for the next decade. And yet we've got 8 apartments and 2 of us have generators.
Yeah. It would be so easy for people to generate their own energy, grow their own food, take care of their own medical concerns, at least a lot of them, a high percentage of their concerns, their issues. But nobody does it. It drives me crazy because they're setting themselves up for disaster, for catastrophe.
Well, we don't have any available land except each apartment has its own patio space, and ours has been bricked up the whole time we've been here. So I have a few things in pots, but basically, some of them are growing plants but they're not growing food. They're growing flowers. But flowers are better than nothing at all. At least they've got green in their yard. But trying to get people to think about what they need for their own survival, because the next door neighbor had a generator big enough that he could share with us the last time that the power was turned off. Well, they had 2 episodes last October. One was just before I had surgery, the other was just after. Okay? So here I am with a big hole in my shoulder and power's off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the neighbor let us plug into his generator, in exchange for which Lou babysat the generator. And one of my friends on Facebook gave me the money to buy a generator. So this year when it starts, we will have our own. But everybody else glared at us all through the whole thing because they lost everything in their refrigerators and we didn't.
Yeah.
One of them told me, I just bought $300 worth of food and it's all gone. And I'm like, you know?
Yeah.
I said, this is the second episode. They said it would be 10 years.
I think they're engineering, they're hardwiring most people, or at least brainwashing them at some point in their lives, to be slaves, to be weak and subordinate or subjected to all these things. There's no reason, in my opinion, for these people not to make the very simple connection, I need to prepare in case something happens, because something always happens. I think the only explanation for why the vast majority of people in our cities today are like that, they just don't prepare. They're lazy, and then they get in these horrible situations, and then they just get mad instead of learning from them, and they repeat, is because somehow they engineered that into them, or they're maintaining that mentality.
They're maintaining the mentality that the government's going to take care of them, but the government won't.
Yeah, we learned that from Katrina. That's a perfect example.
Yeah. Not only did the government not take care of it, but they went through and disarmed people that were taking care of themselves. So, that was just, horrid. And the place they took them to the sports team center. I can't remember the name of it, but they basically entrapped them in there, and over half died, and so they were trapped in there with dead bodies. And I'm like, this is just horrific. Horror on top of horror. And these were the people that the majority are expecting to save them, and I'm like, it's not gonna happen. You have to
got to be your own savior, and two, it's easier than you think as long as you prepare. You got to take some time to prepare.
Yeah, you have to take a percentage of your monthly income and set it aside for disasters. And if you're not even doing a basic food supply, what do you need? What do you need to survive? You need your food, you need a shelter, you need a source of warmth in the winter, and here you need cool in the summer.
Maybe some compatible people that you trust, so some of you are always awake, so you don't have to do everyone's job. You don't have to stay up and exhaust yourself trying to protect yourself.
Yeah. We did have that here a couple of years, 3 or 4 years back. We had a group of Korean veterans that lived in this complex. And Lou had been to Vietnam, so he fit in with them really well. And they would actually schedule patrol around the buildings, and I'm like, you guys are trippy.
Firewatch,
but, Firewatch, tweakers. What else were we looking for? There was a rash of people that were breaking into cars, and none of them were going to do anything about it except call the police. Because they were old men then. And since then, the Korean veterans have all died. Lou found one of them in his apartment, and it was pretty emotional. But what we've got in now are younger people that are thinking the government's going to take care of them. And
they're going to learn a tough lesson.
You can't trust them to have your back because they're not even having their own back.
I learned that the hard way, and I'm glad I learned it when I did. Earlier on in life, I was growing up thinking, all the patriotic stuff I was spoon-fed or force-fed, I guess you could say, and that's part of why I enlisted. I thought, okay, I'm on the good guys' side. We can go fight the bad guys now, and I'll do my part. And year by year, I learned not always the case.
Well, my dad was a preacher for the Church of Christ, and he was a follower of Brother John Birch. And the combo, I was taught never trust anybody. which is actually not bad advice.
Yeah.
I have found that that has been actually really livable advice.
I don't assume everyone's bad, but I don't assume they're good either.
Yeah, you just sort of, all right, if it comes to taking care of me, well, I have me and this guy I've been living with for 19 years, and the rest of the people here, you're on your own.
Yeah.
I'll have them if I can.
That's a part of the reason that I spent so many years working on that city design that I keep telling people about, sustainable homes, or homestead and community. It wasn't just studies and short stories turning into books and a home design turning into a city design. It was because year after year, I got banged up by life and scams and all sorts of stuff. And I thought, okay, I got to do whatever I can, if there is anything I can do, to become sustainable, so I'm not dependent on all these systems that keep failing me. And over the years, the SSP stuff and all these dreams and everything got mixed into it in a good way. They got woven together, and one complemented the other. As I worked on the stories and the city design, I learned more about myself, and I was able to remember more of the dreams and kind of piece it together. And then those tied back into the city. They gave me ideas for, if not new technology, innovative ways to use existing tech, whatever I had access to, whatever I could realistically start building this home in the city with.
One of the things that's frustrated me is we have lost a lot of the pre-electric technology.
Yeah.
There used to be a food refrigeration system that wasn't based on electricity, and it's been used for millennia in the Middle East, also in Africa. So we in the West have basically lost those technologies. So if there were an EMP strike where we lost electricity, my generator wouldn't do any good if the refrigerator can't take it.
Yeah.
So I've been hunting down some of those technologies, and I've also been hunting down some of the ways that they took water out of the air in desert areas. They're presenting some of it as new tech, but it's a very ancient concept. They used to build cisterns out in the desert for that very purpose, to take what water they could out of the air.
I think we'll see more of that in the years ahead. And I'm working with some people to help spread that understanding, if not the technology, products that do that too. So hopefully we'll see more of our communities lean in that direction. At some point, we've got to put it into the building codes. We've got to say, okay, you can't just build a house with the current specifications for materials and function. You've got to have, each home has to be able to provide for the people in it, because the grid goes down and storms and other crap happens. You have to have these people ready from the start, so they don't have to save up as much. They don't have to do all this research on their own.
Well, a lot of this stuff should be being taught in schools, but instead they're teaching them to trust the system.
Yeah.
I look at some of the stuff that my grandkids bring home from school as homework.
It's nonsense these days. For filler. Filler's a good way of putting it.
What they're being taught as history is just a pack of lies.
Yeah. It used to be a fraction of the whole story, and now it's just bold-faced lies.
What I was taught in Shula on Mars, I've been checking it through the internet, and 90% of it was factual. I've been going through and checking what I was taught in California schools in the 1960s and 70s, and it's like 60% of it was factual. Yeah. And I'm looking at what my grandkids are being taught now. There might be, the math is factual, but they're teaching them a really weird way of going about it, so they're not learning logic.
Are you talking about the Common Core, that new math style?
Oh, that's horrid.
God. Yeah. I've met people who don't even know how to use a calculator. They can't do, single or double digit addition and subtraction. They can't do anything.
That's horrid.
Some of these stores, cashiers, they give change unless the computer tells them.
Did you hear Lou? He just
I
said
heard his
there's
voice.
so
I
many.
didn't quite make out what he said.
He said there are so many stores where the cashiers can't make change unless the computer
Yeah.
tells them.
Yeah.
Pathetic.
We're turning into that kind of a society here in the West, and those
Everything's a
people
corruption.
and those people are supposed to compete with people from the Middle East.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, I know people on Facebook in the Middle East, 17, 18, 19 years old, and they're doing the kind of math that I did in college.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is 18 years old and going to a university affiliated with Cambridge.
Mm.
And he's doing math, chemistry, physics. So, I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at cashiers that can't make change,
Yeah.
and thinking to myself, and this will not end well for us. It cannot end
For
well
people
for
like you
us.
and me that are a little bit ahead of the curve for whatever reason, luck or whatever, we'll make it through it, but we're going to deal with a massive problem, a big headache on the way to whatever our conclusion or our success is, I should say. There's definitely going to be, I think, high 90s percentile, like 95% and up of the population that's not going to have any clue what to do, and they're going to turn on each other.
When things start getting hard, they're going to turn on each other, and they're going to turn on those of us that they think can fix it for them.
Yeah.
Like when I had my surgery in October, all these people turned on me because I wasn't available 24/7.
Blame game, drama, and pointing fingers and everything.
Yeah, it was major drama. So
That's another thing they should teach in school, accountability. Or even if you don't know for sure if you're responsible for whatever happened, just step up and come up with solutions instead of problems. And instead of repeating things other people are saying, instead of parroting, research, do your homework, and figure stuff out for yourself. They've got to teach that more.
well, what I'm seeing people in their 20s and 30s, and some even in their 40s and 50s doing, is they find someone they feel is an expert, and then they'll latch onto them and suck them dry.
Yeah. This guy said, or I read in this scientific, organization's paperwork. Yeah, they're still just parroting. Even if you cite things that are from allegedly reputable sources, if you didn't do the research and the prototyping yourself, you're still parroting. I hate how people are like, I read it here, so it has to be true. Come on.
Oh God, there are
Find out.
several, shall I call them leaders in our community, that I listen to what they say and I'm like, no, none of that matches with what I experienced. So, yes, I understand you were in a different faction, but you're describing mine and none of that matches.
Yeah.
So,
I've gotten better about not reacting as much as I used to. When I was younger, I'd ball my fist and I'd get so heated. I'm like, that's not true. And now it's just like, whatever, just the latest round of nonsense.
Well, I ignore it until somebody shoves it in my face.
Yeah, then I'm not
Then
as
it's,
calm and collected.
I may get a little heated in the moment, but I get over it pretty quick. But yeah, you learn to roll with a lot of it and let a lot of it roll off your back. But I have moments when it's like, I'm the one that's been shot at. So I get a little paranoid sometimes.
A lot of negative experiences there. I got shot at a couple times, poisoned a couple times, and just the rampant disrespect. People going out of their way to be rude or judgmental. Not all the time, but enough where I noticed it and it seemed statistically improbable. if not impossible, for that to happen unless it was orchestrated. I got really tired of it. And that's another one of the things I forgot to mention earlier. That's part of what's motivating me to come forward a little bit more now and consider publishing. Just because like there's no motivation for me not to, because they're already being assholes to people, like good people like you and me. So if they're not taking care of us or providing for us in some way, where's my motivation to keep my mouth shut?
Yeah, there's no motivation to be quiet.
Yeah.
I was actually being shot at before I was public,
Yeah,
just for
no
having.
matter how much I obeyed the rules and followed along and said all the things they want to hear, they still treated me like crap. So little by little, I got to where I am now, and I'm very Washingtonian. I'm not quite a rebel or a secessionist, but I want to have my own community and my own little area of the world where I can be myself. I'm not interested in participating in the mainstream crap anymore at all.
Yeah, I'm trained to be a sovereign, but I'm not one. I looked at a lot of it.
Like you mentioned the royal, like a past life of royalty. You mentioned that. I wonder if that's where some of my reactions to people come from, or why, why I have this instinct where I don't really expect or demand respect, but if I don't get it, I'm not participating. I'm just going to keep walking. I want a lot of respect, and I want to be able to give a lot of respect without being made fun of.
Yeah, I don't want to be abused for giving respect.
Yeah.
And
even basic compliments, I've had horribly negative reactions. Sometimes it's just, it's a troll in a chat room or an Instagram or something in the comments. But it's very strange to me that anyone would have a negative reaction to someone being positive, genuinely positive.
A lot of the trolls out there are being paid to be.
Yeah, I saw that. Like troll factories or just office spaces with computers set up everywhere. They don't even have cubicles. They're just trolls parked everywhere, like it's like a LAN party.
They're being paid to protect the agenda of the people that are paying them, and they're in levels. I've had several pages on Facebook, some of which Facebook deleted because they said I was too dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. That's what they actually said. I was too dangerous to be on their platform. But I had one political page, and at first I had the tag team ones that follow the script, and they're real obvious.
Yeah.
And then they figured out that I saw through them, and they started sending me the better ones. And it got to where I could not post a damned thing without somebody spinning it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I hate that when they twist the words, and it's so obvious. That they know they're twisting words, and nothing they're saying makes sense. They still do it.
Yeah. And it was really obvious because I shared from WikiLeaks. And military are not supposed to be on a site that shares from WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
And I was making sure that I shared from WikiLeaks at least once a week. So it was obvious, all the military guys that were on my wall were spies. They were assigned to me. And there was this lieutenant and there was a captain. And it was right in their title and all over their personal walls. And, they were legitimately military. And they were re-spinning everything I posted.
Yeah.
And I'm not supposed to know that they're agents assigned to me.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
They don't have the ability to perceive things. They don't sense things or infer like we do. For whatever reason, they're just not picking up all the subtleties, or they don't have enough life experience to make connections that we make. So they think that they're doing a good job. They're pulling a fast one on us.
Well, I flat out told one of them in Messenger, I said, I know you're an agent assigned to my wall. keep this shit up, and I'm going to ban you from my page. And it was shock, denial. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
you heard me.
I've had
So-
people say so. I mean, I think that's one thing that gives them away more than the annoying unsolicited comments that the trolls post. Is like in person, I've had this sometimes when I just strike up conversations, and I don't go into as much depth as we have today, but every now and then I'll bring up a topic, something that's kind of sensitive, but it's old news, so people have probably heard of it. Like one time I was on a road trip, and we were talking just about whatever, and I mentioned all the underground bases. And one of the guys in the vehicle, he was former Army. I knew that. It was sort of a veteran hangout event. He immediately starts denying that there are any underground bases at all, and it's way too expensive, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that is the most ridiculous crock of shit, dude. You can look up this stuff online. You can go to some of these places. They're abandoned. You can walk right in. And you're telling me there are none. There are none anywhere.
Yeah.
Why would you even bother to open your mouth if you're going to say something that ridiculous and easily provable?
Programming.
Hmm? Yeah, programming. It had to be.
Programming.
It was
I
weird.
s-
It
I
wasn't
see-
creepy, but it was like I felt bad for him, like because no one's going to listen to him from that point on. If they ever see him again, it's like this guy's insane.
Well, I see it all the time in the SSP groups or on my personal wall.
Mm.
I will post something and I automatically get a cognitive dissonance general denial out
Yeah.
of people who should know better.
Yeah.
And I just call it the Agent Smith response.
Yeah.
And there was something I posted in the past couple of days, and the Agent Smiths were so thick that I just deleted. It was like everybody that commented was going with the standard response, and I'm like, F it, gave up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of those that at least 2/3 of what I post is over people's heads. And when somebody gives me the correct response, I'm like, yes.
It is a small victory. I definitely notice it. It's kind of deterred me from trying to network and relate as much as I used to. Before I had so much energy. And I was like, I'm going to find people like me. I mean, we're going to rally and we're going to do stuff. And now it's just anytime anything is understood, I don't have to translate or explain myself or provide, citations. It's like, wow, you are on the level. You have done your homework too. This is amazing. It's like fireworks going off.
Yeah. Well, I've got good people on my personal wall. My friends on Facebook. I would say out of, 720 that I have now, approximately, that probably 100 of them are actually smarter than I am in their field of expertise. So these are mostly people that I respect. And when I come up with something and I get an Agent Smith response, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, you guys are smarter than this. What's going on? These
people kept
these
trying
are
to teach
all-
me. What's up?
These are all people who are smart and educated or self-educated, and they're not your normal run-of-the-mill folks.
Mm.
And I'm quite proud of having collected this
Yeah.
group. They're great folks, and I'm really pleased to interact with them. But when they come up with Agent Smith, it's like, oh no, no.
I'm so quick to ban or block at this point. I used to be, they taught me all the normal stuff they teach people, like, oh, you're supposed to have dialogues and disagreeing is fine, and Yeah, to some extent, it does push you out of your comfort zone, and that's where a lot of growth can be. But when, like you're saying, when it's Agent Smith stuff, it's just regurgitated, and they should know better because they have some more education than the norm. I just block them. I'm like, nah, I can't. I'm not into arguing on the internet anymore. I can't do this.
Well,
But that's cool, and that's one of my goals. I think I want to get to the level where I have 100 people like you do who are experts, and they can teach me a lot of stuff. They can keep my mind expanding.
yeah, I collected some really, really, really good people, and that's why I'm reluctant to walk away from Facebook, even though Facebook keeps screwing with me.
Yeah.
I don't have sound in Messenger.
Really?
Really. I got a new computer in January, and Facebook turned my sound off in Messenger
Yeah.
with the new computer. And I've had 2 IT guys look at it and they say, oh, Facebook did it. We can't undo it. And I'm like,
What about, is
So-
there anything you could set up on your site, or should you just, would it make more sense to use the applications we're using now, like for this call?
it makes more sense to use applications like this. I can take phone calls in Discord. This Discord is actually pretty secure. It's run by Kim.com, and he has every reason in the world to hate the CIA.
I've heard of that guy, yeah. Yeah.
So Discord is probably the most secure place to talk. But still, you have to deal with the ISP on both ends. Your internet service provider can give everything that you do online immediately to whatever agency asks for it. And I've talked to people who are part of Anonymous. And, oh, that isn't true. You can go through Tor. You can go through this. You can go through
Yeah,
that.
some people say, yeah, go through Tor and the Onion and all that stuff. And
The Onion.
it used to be
the
secure, but it's like Bitcoin. It's been infiltrated.
It is so infiltrated that my local police department has an officer that sits on it all day.
Yeah, sounds right.
So, I'm looking at them and I'm incredulous that they're still that ignorant. Nothing is safe if it's going through an internet service provider, even if you have a VPN.
You got to set up your own internet, your own programming language. I mean, it'd take a lot of time to find something that would be not infiltrated from the start.
I used to tease people, well, it's private, you, me, and the CIA.
Yeah. There are memes, there are jokes about that where it shows, you get the drop down on Facebook. It says, show this album to only you and friends in the CIA or the NSA.
Yeah. Everybody gets it. So, and if you're talking to a friend in another country, their country's spy network gets it too.
Oh, yeah.
So I bet that everybody went absolutely bananas when I was going deep on Patreon with a Russian.
Yeah. That triggered another memory, actually. There was one day, my dad, he's it's a whole other story. He's weird. I'll say that. I'm trying to be neutral, not judgmental. But one day he came to me, and I had set up an email account. I don't remember which email client, but I sent him a message through my email client, and I don't remember what I was talking about. It wasn't even a big deal. It was something trivial, like a normal message. And because the name attached to that email address was slightly Arabic or Middle Eastern sounding, a bunch of guys in suits came into his office and gave him a hard time, and they were checking out his emails and trying to figure out why some Arab is emailing him. He came home, and he let the shit roll downhill. He dumped all that on me. He's like, oh, just gave me a hard time. And I'm like, these are the people that are in charge of our country. You can't figure out in like 5 seconds that this is his son, and the name means nothing. It's not even a real name. It's like Babishka Bar or something completely nonsensical. It was made up. And they thought Babishka Bar sounded Middle Eastern. Therefore, my dad's emailing a terrorist, or a terrorist is emailing him. Like, you guys are in charge of stuff, really? I was a teenager at the time too. I didn't even remember that I put the name in there. It wasn't like a prank. It was just so stupid, so over the top. I'm like, Dad, this isn't even a conversation. Go away. I remember stories like that, and I think because that was from the heart. Like, he was seriously concerned and upset with me, and thought that I'd done something stupid. I'm like, other way around, bro. That was the dumbest father-son talk I have ever heard and could ever imagine having. Your email name scared people that know nothing about how the world works.
My email name is what my grandpa called me when I was little. I have used that since I first came online in 2004. And people look at it and they go, what the hell? And I go, hey, I mean, I've given it to you. I don't know where Grandpa came up with it, but that's what he called me when I was little, and it stuck. So, no, I'm not going to say what it is on the air.
Yeah, probably shouldn't give that out. Don't broadcast that.
Don't broadcast that. But yeah, I've got something like 4 emails, and they all have that name on it. Different sites. I spread out. I have one that I use just for when I'm going to get spam. And I know I'm going to get spam, but I want the thing that they're offering.
I get so much spam these days on my phone and the computer. It's nuts. I mean, it used to be every now and then you'd get an unsolicited message, but it got so bad, I had to go into my settings for my email accounts and say anything that is not in my safe senders list, just spam, just delete it automatically. Because I mean, it's 1,000 emails every week, something like that. It's unbelievable how many are automated.
Yeah, people, when I first came online, I learned marketing online. And those people live by the list. So when you sign up for something, your name will be on the list, and they sell those lists.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how.
Oh yeah.
That's how they make money, is by selling those lists. And anytime they come up with a new business opportunity,
Yeah, opportunity.
they share it with everybody on the list. And so when I know I'm signing up for something, it goes to a spam account where that I will never look at it again.
Yeah. And they change their number when they call you. Have you noticed that? I'll get calls, 30, 40, 50 different numbers. It's all the same company, the exact same recording. The voice starts playing when it hears you talking or hears background noise that triggers it. They change the number all the time because they know that what they're offering is crap. And you're going to block their number, so they got it to get through to you, or hopefully someone else in your house that might be stupid enough to listen. They're going to keep changing the number every time. And you try to call the number back, and it never works. It's a one-way. I don't know how they set it up where it's an exit-only number. They can call you, and that's it.
Lou will get into these moods where he will engage those people.
Yeah.
And he plays games.
Oh yeah, keep them on the phone for an hour, eat up their time, screw up their metrics.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard him tell people things that I can't repeat on YouTube.
Yeah. I wish I had time to do it because it's so much fun to mess with them right back.
It's a ball.
Yeah, Lou has a blast at it. But, you know, we have a landline. So we're not, the number isn't changing. We have to keep the same number so my kids can call us, because otherwise they think something happened to mama or papa. And, you know, between us, we have 5 kids. And so you have to keep the phone number or the kids go batshit. And the only people who call us are bill collectors that think we didn't pay them. And I usually produce the receipt and read the number off to them because we pay cash, so it goes through a different system.
Oh, yeah.
And we hear from my doctor's office, and we hear from all of these spammers.
Yeah.
And there's more than one that I've screamed at them, take me off your list. Take me off your effing list. I'm not giving you any money. Take me off your list.
Part of me feels bad because they're desperate enough to take on these crap jobs where everyone hates them, and they're not. I mean, there's no way they're going to get more than a few suckers, per week or whatever. But part of me, I hate them too, and I always want to cuss up a storm at them.
There's a very good friend of mine that I know works at one of these places, but what he's selling is actually decent. I wouldn't mind if he called me. He probably will now. but I tell him I'm on the federal do not call list. I'm going to report your number, and you will have to pay me $500. And they tell me, well, we're not in the United States, so it has no effect on us.
So it's, God.
That's their version of F you.
That's another thing that always sets me off, makes me want to drop some swear words, is when they try to act nice. They say things that they know are socially acceptable in a really slimy way. Like, I know I'm about to get out of this over a technicality. I hate it when they do that.
Yeah, well, Lou comes up with some choice things for them. Some of them I have laughed so hard, and others my jaw dropped open. Where did that come from this usually civilized man? So, yeah. Well, we've been on this over 2 hours.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, it's more than 25 minutes. We better shut up. So five or six episodes. Hopefully we'll break it into 5 or 6 volumes of this first installation.
Well, this first one, it'll just go up. It'll take about 3 hours for it to upload. Okay. And it'll take me probably a day to get all the photos, pictures on it instead of video. Okay. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I've had a blast. And now I have to.
I got so much more I want to talk about.
Good. So